Your client's unconscious mind is your best friend. And that goes for you too. Your unconscious mind is your best friend. Today we're going to talk about the prime directives of the unconscious mind. How does the unconscious mind actually work? How does it come from the factory? If we consider the unconscious mind like a computer, the prime directives is the hard wiring. It's how it comes out of the factory. It's what's built into it. Our beliefs and our values, the emotions, that's the programming. That's the programs that are set in. And when we're working with our clients to create change, we're working at shifting those programs. Another way of calling those programs is the model of the world. And so what we're looking at today is, how does the unconscious mind actually function? How does it work? So if you were to consider the unconscious mind as a storehouse, the unconscious mind stores all of your memories. Everything is stored in the unconscious mind. We might not remember it all consciously, but unconsciously we know that the information is there. And as this little cartoon says here, your unconscious mind is your best friend. So the memories are stored temporally in relationship to time, and those are stored sequentially in a timeline, a line where our memories are stored in a sequential order from the past through to the future. And they're stored atemporally in the form of a grouping of memories, like a memory of, say, a chair. A chair, you can see a brand new chair, or you can see 10 different kinds of chairs, and they still hold the memory of this is a chair. So our memories are stored sequentially, temporally, and atemporally. The unconscious mind makes associations. It links things together, and it links those things that you might have heard it said in the past that the mind is a meaning-making machine. It's trying to make meaning. It's trying to link things together, put things together so that it can understand. It wants order. It wants it to be organized. It organizes our memories in two different ways. The temporal memories are stored in the timeline. They're grouped in the timeline so that that's how the memories are stored, which is a line that's outside of your body. Some part of it might be touching your body, or maybe even in your body. And that's where the memories are all stored. When we're working with accelerated emotional release therapy, we're going back along the timeline to where the different emotions and beliefs and values first began, and working with that energy and those emotions and those decisions back there. This also stores our memories in a gestalt, or a grouping of memories. So sometimes when we go back along the timeline, what we're actually discovering is a memory that might be a series of events that have happened over a period of time. If I were to ask you to go back to, say, a time in kindergarten, you might go back and have a memory of something that happened in September, something that happened in October, and something that happened later on in November. But it's all put together as one memory. So it's a grouping of memories. When we talk about our emotions, when we talk about our beliefs, there was a beginning time when those emotions were first locked away, or those beliefs were first put in place. And then something happened as we moved on in time, and then that event happened again, or there was another event that was linked with that same emotion or that same belief, and then it moved on to another time. So we hold our memories in a gestalt, or a grouping of memories. Our emotions are in a gestalt. Our beliefs are in a gestalt. And so when we're working in therapy, we want to clear out that whole gestalt. we're not just looking at clearing the most recent time that an event was an issue, or the most recent time that that belief had been experienced in a negative way. We want to go back to clear all of those events where that belief or that emotion had been locked away and reinforced. The unconscious mind represses memories with unresolved negative emotion. So the unconscious mind is like a young child, around age 7 or 8, and it just likes to be happy. It likes to feel good. And so when there's unresolved negative emotions in a memory, it'll push it down. It'll lock it away so that we don't have to feel the emotions. So we often have clients that come with repressed memories, who have these memories locked down, and they have maybe no memory from a certain age, or it might be a specific event that they don't have a memory for. And so it's not uncommon for a client to go back to a time along their timeline where they're receiving information from a memory that they had no conscious recollection of. So the present or the unconscious mind, though, as it represses those memories with unresolved negative emotions, it from time to time presents that negative emotion, brings it up into our face for release. So it wants us to get rid of that emotion. And so sometimes we might just be walking down the street and we might see a certain thing, or we might think a certain thought. We might hear a certain sound of voice or a certain word, and it triggers that unresolved negative emotion. It brings it up. The unconscious mind wants us to let it go. And so in terms of accelerated emotional release, the unconscious mind is our ally. The unconscious mind wants the unconscious mind to release those negative emotions that have been locked away. And so it will increase the dis-ease or the discomfort until it is released. It keeps knocking on the door. It keeps saying, let me out, let me out. Now, often what happens in life is our clients come to us because that knocking has been happening, but what they've been doing is every time the door has been knocked, every time that emotions come up, they pushed it down, they pushed it down, they pushed it down. And our job in therapy is to help them to open it up so that it can release. And once it releases, then it's gone. Then we don't have to deal with it anymore. And the unconscious mind keeps those repressed emotions repressed for protection. It thinks it's safest. And so it's part of our job when we're working with the unconscious mind to release those emotions in the past, is to help it to recognize that in fact the unconscious mind is safer with those emotions gone, with those emotions released. Then it no longer has to put energy into repressing it. It can just accept that that's the memory. And for healing to be complete, what that means is that that memory can be present. It's not that we want to erase the memory. We don't want the memory to go away. We want the memory to have no emotion. So what we're healing is when I can think about those events in the past that used to hold that anger, that fear, that sadness, that hurt, and I can feel nothing. I'm neutral with it. I'm in balance with it. That's what true healing is about. And then the unconscious mind is excited. It doesn't have to spend energy repressing that memory. It can keep it open. It can let the memory be present and put its energy elsewhere. The unconscious mind runs the body. It runs the body. It has a blueprint for how the body is now, and it runs it. So, for example, we don't think about our breath. We don't think about our heartbeat. We don't think about the secretions of hormones, the digestion of our food. We don't think about that stuff. It just happens automatically. Now, Dr. Bruce Lipton was looking at this several years ago now, wondering how it is that the mind affects the body. And his conclusion was that our consciousness, our thoughts about what our body is like, affects how our body is. And so as we go on in life, that blueprint just happens underneath. Now, our higher conscious mind has the blueprint of perfect health. And so in working with health issues with the body, with physical health issues, what we want to do is we want to help the unconscious mind change its blueprint. We want the unconscious mind to have a different concept of the body so that it can start creating at the cellular level the changes in the body. Of course, remembering when you're working with any physical dis-ease, that you also want to work in conjunction with medical science. Because it's that combination. If you reflect back to the useful beliefs, the mind and the body affect each other. So we want to work together in combination. The unconscious mind, and I believe this is its highest prime directive, is to keep you safe. It wants you to be safe. It wants you to be comfortable. It wants you to be at ease. It has only positive intention for you. And so everything it does has positive intention, and that means it's your greatest ally, both for you and for your client. Your engagement with the client's unconscious mind, if you engage this aspect of it, recognizing it wants to keep their clients safe, it can help, because you know that the safest way for them to be is to release those old limitations that have been holding them back from being happy and healthy and vibrant. And the unconscious mind maintains the integrity of the body. It keeps it as an integrated whole, working as best it can to keep it functioning in a positive, healthy way. The unconscious mind is the domain of our emotions. You may remember from an earlier lesson me saying that all learning, all behavior, and all change is unconscious. It is also the domain of our emotions, reflecting back to the discussion on the three selves. It is the unconscious mind that is the storehouse of our emotions. And so that is where our emotions reside. And that is why when we're working with emotional issues, we need to be working with the unconscious mind to release that from there, release the emotions out of the unconscious mind. The primary tool is sensation. And sensations, we have a certain sensation in our body, and we interpret that as an emotion. We label it. Oh, that means that I'm sad, or I'm happy, or I'm bored. So working with the unconscious mind to release the emotions, to the negative emotions, to encourage those positive energies and emotions to be moving. The unconscious mind is a highly moral being. It's highly moral. It follows the morality that has been programmed into it. Now, it's not the universal morality, because that's within the higher conscious mind. It controls the programmed morality, what you've been taught to be true, to be right, to be accurate or important. And so it holds on tenaciously to that which it has been taught, to that which it thinks is the best way to be. And so, for example, when a negative belief comes into place, like I'm a bad person, nobody likes me, those kinds of things, the unconscious mind holds on to those beliefs, thinking that that's the truth, and that's best to be. And so we work with the unconscious mind to release those old beliefs, to create new beliefs in order to bring those changes. Once those changes take place, once it grasps a hold of a new belief, then it holds on to that strongly and doesn't let that go. The unconscious mind is a servant. It likes to follow orders, and it needs clear direction. And that's why when we're setting our goals, we need to be specific. It needs to be measurable. It needs to be talked about in terms of the outcome. It needs to be clear. And so when you're talking to your unconscious mind, when you're giving it directions, give it clear directions. When you're working through mindfulness and hypnotherapy processes with your client, it's important to be clear with what you want the client to be thinking, using your language patterns to create the thoughts inside your client that leads them to their outcome, to their goal. And lastly, the unconscious mind controls and maintains all perceptions. It is not the creator of all perceptions. Some of our perceptions come from the higher conscious mind. Some of our perceptions come internally through the conscious mind. We see it visually or hear it outside, comes in and gets processed into the unconscious mind. But it all goes through the unconscious mind. It's all processed there. And so that speaks to the importance of keeping our unconscious mind clear. If you reflect back to the three selves, that information about our conscious mind being the middle self, the unconscious mind being the lower self, and the higher conscious mind being the higher self. Remembering the connection is from the conscious to the unconscious and then up to the higher conscious. And so with the conscious mind being the mediator, then if it's full of junk, if it's full of negative emotions, beliefs, values, etc., then it becomes murky in there and it distorts, deletes, and generalizes the information, remembering the therapeutic model of the world and those filters. And so we want the unconscious mind to be clear. The more that we clear the unconscious mind, the more our perception expands and our telepathic perceptions, our intuitive perceptions increase. And so as you grow and practice and learn through your own processes with the unconscious mind, that starts opening up those connections. And that intuitive connection is one of the most important aspects of our work with our clients, to be able to intuitively sense. Now, we don't obviously trust all of the things that we get. We check it out with our client, but it gives us a lot of information that we can explore. And as we work with that, we get more and more accurate information. And so this speaks really strongly to the importance of therapists doing their own therapy, not only so that they get cleared themselves, they clear those things out of the way, but also for them to have that experience of being both client and therapist, so that they can move back and forth between those two, recognizing the two experiences. It's also really important to practice. That's one of the reasons why it's most important to practice these skills as you're learning these different practices, experiences, to practice it with another person where you become both the client and the therapist. And so if you're having a challenge finding somebody to work with, contact us and we will find a way to connect you. We're hoping that we will have an active group where different students can be connected with other students all the time, and I look forward to that happening. So the unconscious mind controls and maintains all of our perceptions. It receives that information and then it transmits it to the conscious mind. And so speaking about that murkiness of the unconscious mind, that's one of the things that you want to be cautious about when you're working with a psychic. If you go to a psychic, recognize that the psychic does also filter the information they're getting through their unconscious mind. So you want to be, if you're working with a psychic, you want to be working with a psychic that is as clear as possible, that is taking direct information and is not distorting, deleting, and generalizing that information. Number 13, the unconscious mind generates, stores, distributes, and transmits all energy. And so it is in the unconscious mind that energy is processed. The highest energies come from the higher self and are dropped down to the unconscious mind. And you probably noticed yourself when your unconscious mind is burdened, when you're stressed out, when you have a lot of emotions or limitations that are holding you back, that your energy is very low. You're dragging yourself around. And as you clear that stuff, you start getting more energy, you get more vibrant, you get more active. The unconscious mind responds with instinct and habit. So it follows its patterns. It just works naturally. And that's why if you're working with changing habits, like addictions, like certain behaviors, when you're working with changing those habits, it's essential to work with the unconscious mind and to have the unconscious mind doing what it needs to do to clear out those old patterns. And then it's important to practice, to repeat it, so that the unconscious mind can have it locked away, can memorize the pattern, remembering that that's one of the functions of the unconscious mind, is to memorize the patterns. So that's the software that's built in. The process is, or the way that happens is that it responds with instinct and habit. And repetition installs that. Repetition allows that memorization to take place, and then it happens naturally. And for change to really be effective in my book, it needs to be something that I don't need to worry about anymore. It's not something that I should need to have to think about. So for example, let's say in public speaking, I used to be terribly afraid of speaking in public. I was always worried about what other people would think and what that would mean about me. When I healed that, when I discovered that I'm just being me and it's okay, I can just express myself, and it doesn't matter if people agree or don't agree, whether they like it or they don't like it, I can still be me and like myself. When I discovered that, then I no longer had to think about it. But before, I used to have to work myself up. I used to have to prepare for speaking in public. I used to practice, and I'd take deep breaths and all kinds of things in order to be comfortable. So change really is only effective when I don't have to do anything, when it just happens naturally. And that's another reason why it's essential to work with the unconscious mind, for the unconscious mind to create new habits, new behaviors to respond differently in the world. And finally, no, this isn't finally, but the next one is the unconscious mind needs repetition for long-term projects, and that's why practice. Practice, do again, repeat, practice. That builds the skills, it locks it into the unconscious mind. Remembering when you learned how to drive a car, it was very strange to begin with until you went out often enough, until it finally became natural and you didn't have to think about it anymore. It needs the repetition. The unconscious mind is programmed to seek more and more. It always wants to learn more. It loves learning more. It doesn't like being a couch potato and just sitting and vegging out. It likes to be active, to be busy, to be stimulated. The unconscious mind functions best as an integrated unit. It functions best as a complete whole, as a complete pattern. So when we have parts that are holding us back. Part of me wants to do this, part of me wants to do that. Part of me wants to quit smoking, part of me doesn't want to quit smoking. That's disintegration, and that causes conflict. It functions best as an integrated whole. We were once a whole being, and we are again. We can be again. And in order for us to be our best, that's what we need. The unconscious mind is symbolic. It communicates with symbols. It doesn't always give us concrete information. And that's why the use of metaphor is really important. That's why we work with the dreams, the messages that come from the symbols of our unconscious mind. That's why we don't look at exactly what it is that the client is receiving in a memory. So the client goes back on the timeline, picks up a memory from the past. We're not concerned with whether it's accurate, whether it's exactly what happened. What we're working with is the unconscious mind's concept of what happened. Recognizing that the unconscious mind distorts, deletes, and generalizes information, we want to work with that concept. What is it that the unconscious mind thinks happened? And that's why if a client comes to recover past memories, say for a court case, sometimes clients come and they say, you know, I think I was abused in the past and I'd like to discover that. The first question that I ask is, are you interested in litigation? If you find out that you were abused, do you want to take the person to court? Because if they do, then hypnotherapy, mindfulness processes is not the best way to do it. In fact, in many courts across the world, memories that are recovered through hypnotherapy are not acceptable. And so that's not appropriate to work because of the fact that sometimes the messages are symbolic. There is, of course, other issues that are present in terms of false memory syndrome, and we can implant memories in our client by suggesting that a certain person was there, or by asking the question, was that your dad or was that your mom? Can implant it there and not necessarily pull out the facts. So the unconscious mind communicates with symbols. If the client says, no, I'm not interested in litigation, then it's perfect for you to work with them because they're wanting to clear out that issue so that they can be healthy and happy now. And so whether it's the exact facts that they go back to and receive, or whether it's some distortion of those facts, doesn't matter. What matters is that they receive the lessons that they need to, and they work with the unconscious mind's concept of what happened. The unconscious mind takes everything personally. It takes everything personally. So everything that it hears, it thinks is about him. So let's say that you're sitting in a room and somebody is complaining about somebody else. Your unconscious mind thinks that that person's complaining about you. And if you think about it, when you're sitting with complainers, people that are not happy in the world, do you leave feeling good? No, you don't. And the other thing that's important to recognize here is your thoughts. When you're thinking bad things about somebody else, when you're thinking, oh, that person's a dirty, rotten so-and-so, or they're mean, blah, 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 your unconscious mind thinks that you're thinking that about you. And you're feeling that in yourself, and it doesn't feel good. And so pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your environment. What are you being around? What are you hanging around? I know when I used to work in the school system as a social worker, I would go into some staff rooms and there would be kind of groupings in the staff room. There'd be a group of teachers that were I called them the bitchers. And you'd go with them and they'd always be, nagging and complaining about something. And there'd be the group of people that were the upbeats, that were the more positive people. And you go hang with them and you feel better when you leave. And it was always that way. So recognize that your environment, what you hear, what you're experiencing, even in your music, in the stories you read, in the movies you see, in the television you watch, that all is affecting your unconscious mind. Now remember I said that the unconscious mind is like a young child around 7 or 8. Well, it works on the principle of least effort. And what that means is that basically it's going to do as little as it needs. So if you tell your unconscious mind that you want to get more money, if you set that as a goal, then your unconscious mind doesn't have to do anything. It goes, well, I know that there's going to be more money coming in some way. It just happens. We get money, you know, there's a paycheck, there's a refund somewhere, there's a whatever, money's going to come in. So you want to be specific, and that's why we're talking in our goal setting, in that lesson on achievable goals, we're talking about being specific. What specifically do you want? So, for example, if you think of a young child, if you have a young child around 7 or 8, and you say, clean up your room, they might go in and they'll pick up a few things and go, wow, it's done. But if you want them to be thorough, you would say, go into your room and make your bed, pick up your clothes off the floor and put them in the laundry hamper and dust your furniture. So that you're specific, they know what they need to do. And the last thing is that the unconscious mind does not process negatives directly. What the unconscious mind, it doesn't understand a negative. So in fact, if you were to say to someone, don't think of a blue tree, you first have to think of the blue tree before you don't think of it, before you erase it. And so this is very important. I think we talked about this in the hypnotic language patterns lesson, where when your client says, I don't want to be sad anymore, and when you're looking at your goals, you say, well, what do you want? What will you be experiencing? The client says, this is hard. That gets that, what you say then is, that's right, it's not very easy. So you're using the not, so you're speaking to the conscious mind, using the negative, but you're using the words easy, which is what the client's hearing is easy. So be careful of your language. Be careful of using negatives. That actually directs the client to what you don't want.